Council. You all have read that and you know the date. Andrew, do you want to speak to this?
No, I think it's reasonably self-explanatory, councillors, I'd like to think.
Yeah.
It's one of the shorter papers, you get.
So we're saying the 9th of November, 9 a.m. for our first formal council meeting. Do we have a mover that's the date? Councillor Balford, Councillor Bailey. All those in favour?
Question.
Question?
That includes the appointment of chairs.
That does.
Plus any other item that is justified to go directly to council. Is that correct?
It does.
Yep.
Well, it's quite a way out. Is there any reason why it is that far out?
There has been suggested to me at pre-meeting that we get on and elect the committee chairs. Is that what you're suggesting that we do? We propose, or can we do that?
Not
Not on the
today.
agenda, so we
Yeah,
can't.
so I think you do need the
So,
order for that.
yeah.
It's whether you want to set another date, but
Okay.
can't be before the night.
We just have advice.
bit of
Would you
local
mind
government.
relaying that advice?
Yeah, according to the local specific number of days between the inaugural meeting and the first ordinary,
Okay.
and that was put that way to meet that requirement.
There's a fair bit to do. I mean, you need terms of reference for each committee and so on. And I would hope there wouldn't be too much onloading of other matters, because by rights we should form our committees and then start doing our work through committees. That's my view.
Good. Whilst we're constrained by what we can do by the legislation, it doesn't mean to say that we have to do everything formally. I would have thought it raises the possibility of us having a meeting of councillors in a formal meeting whereby we can discuss a wide range of issues and get a lot of things clear to that, and it would then make the formal business go a lot quicker. So I think that's something that you could canvass, chair, and see what people's diaries are like, and if they're willing to have an informal meeting, seminar, call it what you want, workshop.
I think it's a very good suggestion. We are having a workshop this afternoon, so we can raise those issues at that workshop. You happy with that? So do we have a mover? No, we did, and we had a seconder. Is that this way? Okay, mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Our first meeting is on the 9th of November. So that's when it is. It's the date of our first meeting. Now we have item 8, proxy for the HBRIC meeting. So this is a really important one. You've all read the paper. Yeah.
Thanks.
Our CEO wants to talk to this.
Chairman, just look, I don't want to talk to the huge amount of it, other than clearly HBRIC has to have its AGM, I think, within 3 months of the end of the financial year. So I have been advised by HBRIC that they would like to consider a date sometime in November, not the 7th. And so therefore that part of the resolution may need some amendment. The form, and I think it's in the Constitution, but I'll get that confirmed by Liz in a minute, is this the council. The council itself is the entity, is the vote. It votes at the AGM, and the proxy has either been the chairman or the deputy chairman, unless the council decides it's one other councillor. So I just want to make that point. And Liz, do you want to just make? I'm aware there's just been a question or two around this issue, so we've had a little bit of a look this morning.
Thank you, Andrew. The rights attached to the shares confer on the holder the right to one vote on a poll at a meeting of the company on any resolution, including any resolution to approve a major transaction, such as the financial statement for the year, and to alter the constitution or to appoint or remove a director. So it's one vote for the shareholder, which is the Hawke's Bay Regional Council.
Firm, that is the only vote.
Questions? Or comment?
Can the shareholder move a resolution at the AGM?
Yes, with notice.
So there's some
and
notice requirement
yeah.
in the,
It would need notice, Councillor Belford, and it would also need, my advice would, that if there was a resolution moved, it would have to go through its own council process first, council committee and council process most likely.
and is the implication of the date change that the AGM would be after our November 9th meeting there, therefore I would presume?
I think the directors would want to have a, yes, I gather the directors would want to have a chat with the councillors, but I haven't actually talked to them about it. I've only been advised by email.
So I didn't actually hear what you said before, but the 7th is no longer the date, is that correct?
No, it's just sorry. Yeah, Councillor Bevan, yes, that's correct. The resolution reads the 7th. I've been advised by the company that they wish to have the meeting with you on the 9th, or their report on the 9th, and then determine the date sometime in November.
Okay. All right, so is there any agenda for that meeting being prepared? Do you know?
The agenda for the AGM specifically?
Yeah.
Well, there will be, and I believe sorry, Diane's not here, but I'm not sure when the next HBRIC board meeting is, but that will presumably determine the agenda. So I will personally need to go back and check that. So really the substantive issue in this paper is really the proxy, identifying the proxy.
Okay, all right. So, but there is another, in my mind anyway, another critical issue, and that is the fact that a number of councillors, since the election, have indicated their support for a moratorium on the dam and to have a review. It's a position that I support, and I think it would be really helpful if we were able to discuss that and formalise it at a council meeting, because otherwise it has no authority, it has no legal authority, prior to HBRIC having their AGM, because I think it's a significant matter which needs to be put in front of them. So the fact that their annual meeting is going to be subsequent to the 9th of November is a desirable outcome in my mind.
Just a follow-up question from Councillor Belford's line there was, you talked about there needed to be a notice of any motion be put by the council to HBRIC. What's the period of that notice?
We'd have to review the constitution, unless you're across it.
So I think what Councillor Bailey is referring to is a notice of motion to be considered by council, is that correct? No?
No, notice of motion to be considered by the AGM of HBRIC.
You would have to go through council process first, would you not, to get support for that? Yes. So the notice of motion for a council process is five working days before a meeting? No, a minimum of 5 working days before a meeting.
Sorry, through the chair. What I'm after is that for a notice to be passed at the HBRIC AGM, what's the period that's required to be before the board of HBRIC to make it so that we can actually be passed there?
We'll have to check that. I'm not sure. I'm only aware of the council processes. I'll have to check the HBRIC timeline.
I could interrupt. I imagine they're a limited liability company. They're not a statutory company like us. So you wouldn't have to have, if you were the shareholder, you wouldn't have to have any notice. You just go turn up at the AGM and say, here's my thing.
No, that's fine.
But Mr. Chairman,
Different.
Mr. Chairman, the only shareholder of HBRIC is the council, so it has to be a council resolution.
5 days.
Formally by council.
Yeah, that's 5 days. Yeah, we understand that.
You can't just have a councillor going along there and putting his hand up.
No, I didn't suggest that,
Yeah,
Councillor
damn,
Dick. I didn't suggest that. Once it's formalised in the council, then whoever is a proxy has that authority. Councillor Curtin.
Yes, Mr. Chair, can I just seek clarification around the notice, the annual general meeting notice period? We've got a paper that says the 7th of November is the date of the AGM, and I'm now picking up that that's no longer viable for some reason. We've got councillors wishing to understand the process for a notice of motion to come from council, which obviously requires that 5 days, whether we go to a committee and then council, I'm not sure. But can I ask what the notice period is for public notification of the HBRIC AGM? Is it 2 weeks, a week?
Well, a normal company is 3 weeks, but
There will be a period, and sorry, I'm not absolutely across the specific legislative requirement of the AGM, so we'll have to give you. What I maybe to help with all of this is that we can provide you with a short, simple note around process, both the council process as well as AGM process for HBRIC, statutory timings and any other timings that are relevant to the Constitution. Rather than debating it here, I think we need to come back to you on that. The second piece of the second thing I'd suggest is you actually have on the 9th meeting you have a discussion with the HBRIC directors. They are charged and they have a responsibility under Acts to govern the company, and I think you have to have that conversation. Sorry?
We can't hear. Speak up, please.
I'll move that closer. And my point is that I think as an owner of the company, I think you do need to meet with the directors of that company because they have a particular responsibility as directors, independent directors, and I'm sure you're all aware of that. So that makes sense to do that on the 9th. In the meantime, therefore, this paper simply looks for the identification of the proxy. Whether you wish to leave that on the table too until after the 9th, I don't think personally I don't think that's a hugely critical issue right now. But you could resolve it now, or you could simply leave it now. And typically, it's been the chairman or the deputy chairman as the alternate.
just for clarification, Andrew, the question is very specific. We do need to know, and so if we could write this down, we do need to know the time of notice, which in a normal private company is 3 weeks, when HBRIC, so that we need, as the shareholder, 3 weeks notice of the meeting. That's your point, and I think it's a very valid point. And the other thing is, we're certainly very keen to meet the HBRIC directors as a collective, but you're very right, very correct. We need to nominate a person today, whether it be the chair, deputy chair, or somebody else from our group, who will hold the proxy. So it's their hand that goes up and makes the vote. Comment which is different to that?
No, I just comment. Could I just help here? I just think it would be helpful, given the nature of the questions, for the CE to go through and outline briefly in an email what the processes would be internally within this council and the processes and the timelines within HBRIC itself, just for clarity. Notice all that, so get all of those things. They're all procedural stuff, we do that. They'll just help clarify them. The other comment I was going to make is that it seems that we've got a sort of thought thread running through here that this is about a formal relationship, and there's no question that it is. We are 100% shareholder of HBRIC. But when you're a 100% shareholder of a company, your relationship with the company is quite different than any other relationship. So if this council passed a resolution on something, yes, you could take it through the formal processes, but it would be a stunning thing if HBRIC required that to be undertaken. I think we just have to recognise we have a unique relationship with them, given the fact that we're 100% shareholders. And when we race for the rule book, I think we're missing a point here.
Mr. Chairman, except when it interferes with the statement of intent, which is a negotiated position.
Question, possibly to Leanne. can the processes for a notice of motion to be tabled in order for a council decision to be made on a matter at perhaps an extraordinary meeting, can that be initiated or put in place before the formalities of appointment of committee chairs and those other things that we've got to finalise on the 6th, 9th? Or do we have to get that out of the way first? I would have thought it was the most orderly thing to do, to follow process, and then get into stuff. Because in any case, unless it's something extremely urgent and important, our deliberations should go through a double debate process. They should go to committees and then to council.
Make a comment. I think, Councillor Dick, the process you've outlined there is a sound process.
Except we've got a paper in front of us to say, to nominate the proxy to go to the HBRIC.
And that's, sorry, Chairman, but if I can comment, I think that's a reasonably straightforward matter. I'm there personally.
Happy to move, Mr.
Yep.
Chair.
Well, I actually, I want to move from the chair that Councillor Bevan be our proxy to the HBRIC. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconder?
And who's the alternate?
You mean if he's in France somewhere?
He's not available on that. To
No, I'm not prepared to comment on that. I'm recommending who I regard as the best person to do that job.
Because we haven't even got a date yet.
No, but we have a paper to nominate our proxy, and he can start thinking about it.
Maybe if I can, sorry, if I can comment, I think it's really straightforward. I think you're better off to get your proxy identified. You do need an alternate if you want to recommend an alternate, and at least that decision's made, because that is a straightforward matter.
So could I just suggest to you, Chair, that you amend the resolution that the resolution be amended by taking out the chair and substituting Councillor Peter Bevan, and of doing that, you then have the deputy chair as the alternate. Solves the problem.
And I'd second that.
Thank you. I'm happy to accept that change to my resolution.
Mr. Chair, just a point of order, please.
not gonna
The
point-
resolution as it stands still contains the date, Monday the 7th of November. So we're going to have to modify. My recommendation, Mr. Chair, is let the thing lie on the table until the 9th and decide then both the proxy and the date of the meeting and all other matters relating to notices of motion and the like. I'm wondering why proxy has become so intrinsic to this when other elements are equally intrinsic, and we're leaving those to lie on the table.
I'll second that.
Leanne, to help the chairman. bit of classic if I could be a wee bit informed, councillor, there's a bit of classic process or stuff that we need to figure out what was there's an existing resolution. There's been a motion.
But the date is wrong.
There's been a motion, I believe there's been a motion moved by, at least informally. Yeah. So I think you need to vote on the first resolution first.
Subject to the date being changed.
Yeah. Do you want me to read this out?
Yes, Leanne's
if you
going
can
to come to
read it out,
rescue
put it on-
here.
Is there any chance of putting it on that board, Leanne? No.
If we all turn it all on and everything,
No,
which is
just
probably
read
going
it,
to take
read it.
longer. Sorry, I'll just read out an amended resolution as per the chairman's words. So agrees that Councillor Peter Bevan be appointed as Council's proxy at the 5th Annual General Meeting of the Hawke's Bay Regional Investment Company Limited to be held at a time and date in November 2016, still to be confirmed, and to vote as proxy holder on behalf of the council, and that the Deputy Chairman of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council act as alternate.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. If we go with that particular rendition, we end up with a situation where we come back with a 3-week notice period, takes us into December, so we're in trouble with that one as well. I go back to it, I say, let the thing lie on the table and resolve this on the 9th of November.
No, I don't agree with that, but I'm happy to move the resolution as put out by Leanne. Do I have a seconder for that? So we do have a seconder?
Mr. Chairman, I think there's some confusion here. Well, in fact, an immense amount of confusion. If this council wants to make a statement to or an instruction to HBRIC, it can do it at any time as long as it's followed due process. So trying to link that with the AGM, I think is inappropriate, and we would have great difficulty in making it work. I mean, the AGM is pretty much a formality to adopt the accounts and appoint directors and whatever. If there's any special message that is required to be passed on to HBRIC, then that can be done independently and expeditiously.
I take on board what you're saying, and but nevertheless, we have. I don't agree with what you've said. Actually, the AGM is a really important meeting where the shareholder can have a say, and we have before us a paper that wants to appoint a proxy, and an alternate has been suggested. I think Leanne's put up a very good compromise, and I want to take a vote on it. So we have a mover and seconder for Leanne's suggestion. All those in favour? You can, certainly. Do you want to speak to it?
I would like to speak to the motion. I'll be speaking against the motion as is on the table. I think, as you've just said, Mr. Chairman, that the AGM is a really important meeting, and I'm just floored that that's the first responsibility that you in your position as chair have been granted by this committee and this council, and you're abdicating on it without even a date being there, and I'm firmly opposed to that. I think you've got responsibilities and you should be taking them on board.
Thanks for your lecture, Councillor Hewitt. Appreciate that. Any other comment?
Mr. Chair, I don't want to hold delay in the matters, but we end up with a problem if the date is in December, not November. And the resolution as it's been proposed confines us to a meeting time in November.
Sorry. So that council agrees that Councillor Peter Bevan be appointed as council's proxy at the 5th Annual General Meeting of the Hawke's Bay Regional Investment Company to be held at a time and date in 2016, still to be confirmed, and to vote as proxy holder on behalf of the council, and that the Deputy Chairman of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council act as alternate. Moved by Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Barker.
All those in favour? Aye. Aye. Against? It's carried. Thank you. No. Okay. Information.
Yeah,
Item 27.
Item 27.
Yeah, so you'll do that, Mr. Chief Executive.
Thanks for that, Mr. Chair. Okay, so item 9, Local Government Information and Meetings Act. It's a standard process just to identify the acts that are relevant to you as councillors. I maybe...
Councillors, can you just... One meeting at a time?
Dare I say, councillors, you're clearly enamoured of this particular paper and the various acts. Look, it's pretty straightforward. It's information. It is your responsibility to be aware of these acts and the obligations in them. And I'm simply suggesting that we go straight to the resolution unless anybody wants a description of those acts in detail. in which case I will definitely defer to Leanne. Right, so that's all I need to say, I think.
A question, councillor? You can have a comment if you like.
I just want to remind councillors and for perhaps new councillors who aren't aware that there is a pending issue in front of us here, or particularly in my case, of compliance or not, or a judgment about my obligations under this act with a request that was made during the previous term, which is in some process of being considered by us, the Ombudsman and so forth. It's my intention to press this issue and at a whatever our next official opportunity is in a council meeting to seek the council's support for my position, which will be to not provide the information that has been requested of me. So I just want to let people know that taking the opportunity, this item is on the agenda to make clear that there's a very contestable set of information requests that have been made to this council that are being handled quite differently, inconsistently in my judgment, and I'm going to seek further advice from the council as to how we wish to proceed in both of those matters.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bevan, do you have a...
Yes, I've got a comment question. I understand Councillor Belford's position on this, but I don't understand what the council's position is, and I think that this is done under delegated authority, but I'm not quite sure what's been done, and I wonder if we can get some clarification on where this matter currently stands.
So I'm happy to have that clarification. The matter of Councillor Balfour's emails to certain people being discovered because...
The moment that my understanding is that is now with the Ombudsman, because there's been a complaint made by the requester. Council declined to provide the information, and consequent to that, there's been a official complaint lodged with the Ombudsman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barker?
Can I move the resolution? Keeps on track.
You wish to keep us on track, but I also want to make sure these very serious matters are aired, councillor. So don't rush us along. But I will take your movement. Do we have a seconder that we accept the?
I've got a slightly different motion. I want to move that council takes note of the requirements contained in the Local Government Information and Meetings Act 1987. I don't see it necessarily as information; they are requirements. I'm being pedant. I'm getting this from Neil.
Picky. They are requirements.
I'll second that.
There's a seconder. I'm just hoping I don't get your name wrong, Councillor Curtin. So we have a mover and a seconder. Do we have any other discussion on this? Otherwise, take to the vote. All those in favour? Aye. Recommendation is accepted. Item 10. This is another one for you. Relative laws.
Essentially, this is joyful. It's essentially, it's essentially the same process. There are various acts, I'll repeat it, Local Government Act, Local Members Interests Act, Crimes Act, and various other acts that do apply to the council, and essentially, again, councillors need to be aware of these acts and just be cognizant of them in their duty as governors. So, again, the recommendation is the council takes note of the information contained in the relative laws and legislation affecting elected representatives report. Again, what I would say is that we are happy if any councillor wants a description of these acts and the obligations in them, we're happy to do that. And we could do that. We could we could do that by way of workshop or separately, just as the case may be, because many of you have been local, you've been elected officials for a long time. So it's a sort of, let's face it, it's a sort of, I'd rather processes, the most efficient process will be for those members who need more information that we do that in a process, okay? Yep.
Mr. Chairman, could there be copies of these respective
Yep.
votes in the
Yes, they can.
councillor's room?
Yep.
Not for removal, and any councillor requiring updated copies of acts. For example, I think everyone should have an update copy of the Local Government Act. That those be distributed.
I think that would be.
Yep, happy to do
okay.
that.
Yeah.
Yep, you got that, Leanne?
Any other questions or
Yep.
comments on this? Otherwise,
Question
Yeah.
to the Chief Executive. My question to the Chief Executive is, in your report, you talk about the relative laws and legislation. Could you tell me what's different between the law and legislation? You seem to make two requirements on me. I'm a bit confused about
This
this.
is from the ex-Minister of Justice.
Well, I'd be perfectly happy with the resolution. In a pragmatic sense, contain one word or the other, councillor.
Are you happy to move, councillor?
I'll move the council takes note of the requirements contained
We're
in
gonna
the
change
laws affecting elected representatives.
We're making the same subtle change, and seconded by councillor Wilson. It's been very pragmatic, moving us along. Do we have any other comments? Otherwise, we'll move the amended resolution. All those in favour? Aye. Against? It's carried. Very much, everybody. That is the end of our meeting, first meeting today. Yeah, now, we have a workshop at 1, starting at 1, do we?
Yeah, we can, with councillor's agreement, you can take a short break and move on.
Yeah, 12:30. So we're going to meet again 12:30 for a councillor-only workshop, is it? Yeah, councillor-only workshop.
Give a bit of an idea of what the time expectation might be for that.
So what do we do for the next hour?